All right, guys, welcome to the Monday Notes here. We're starting our new unit, kind of the Middle Ages into we'll start with the beginning of the Middle Ages. We'll probably not get all the way through the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages because we will be doing about half of it next trimester. So, uh, this will be our final one. So, we're going to do Western Christianity. We'll talk about some other cool things in the Middle Ages. We'll talk about the Crusades. That's a big part of the Middle Ages. So, we'll get through all that. And then this will be our final test. So during finals week, which is next week, this will be our content here. So let's just kind of dive in here. For today, we're going to look at the Western Christianity of civilization, aka the beginning of the early Middle Ages. So here's your learning goals. We're going to distinguish between these couple individuals: Clovis, Charles Martel, aka Charles the Hammer, Charlemagne, and some of their similarities. So those are the three big people we're going to be looking at today. The big thing is looking at the role of the church and how powerful they are compared to maybe nowadays. And the big what if question is, what if Charles Martel or Charles the Hammer didn't win the Battle of Tours against the Muslim invaders? So we're going to obviously talk about him winning the Battle of Tours, but we're going to look at what happens if he would have lost. The vocab for today, Middle Ages, you guys can kind of read through it. This one's called the Benedictine Montacism. So that one's a little bit more interesting. Louis the Pious, Charlemagne, the Bloody Eagle, Holy Roman Empire, the clergy, Carolingian dynasty, Charles Martel, monastery convert. All right, so no Spain, no Byzantine. Oh no, so the Byzantine Empire has just basically fallen. So it's kind of like now what happens in Europe. Okay, we looked at the East, we looked at Asia and China. We see what's going on there, and now when we're back to Europe, the Byzantine Empire had just fallen. It looked like Muslim invaders were going to take over Europe, but a couple people stepped up to make sure that European would stay, I would say, Christian. All right, so here we go. So we got the founder of the Frankish state, Clovis. We want to know him. Clovis is going to be the great unifier. Remember now, during the fall of Rome, all these different tribes in Europe, these barbarian tribes, are just like in Germania or Germany. So he's going to be the one to kind of, hey, let's all not be separate tribes. Let's combine, and we can be a super big superpower. That's kind of the deal. So Clovis basically unites all the clans, lights on the different barbarian groups, and now this marks the beginning of the Merovingian period in history. So when Clovis unites everybody, that's when we start the stop clock on the Merovingian. All right, what does this mean? Well, it's the first state since the fall of the Rome in the West. So basically, this is the first time we're going to have a collective group, big group, a big empire, not really as big as Rome, right? You can't really do that right now because, again, things are so backwards in Europe. Things have definitely, in Europe, after the fall of Rome, it's like technology, literacy, everything that's good takes a step backwards. So for the first time ever, the future is actually worse than the past. Okay, so that's what's kind of happening here. Lord of the Rings, where did the power really reside? In Western Europe, it was the church, okay? Mainly the Roman Catholic Church. So they had all the power. So the Pope was the most powerful person in Europe. Okay, that's 100% fact, and we'll talk about that later. And the question is, what could the Pope offer that no man could? And the answer is hope. Especially in a time when everything looks desperate, and everyone realizes that things are worse now than they were back when Rome. And so offering people hope when a lot of people's lives are bleak at the moment is a big thing. So some of the big players in the church is Pope Gregory, aka Gregory the Great, and this guy named Benedictine Montacism. All right, represented hope for Europe, developed this idea of purgatory and the idea of penance. So this wasn't really a thing, but now under this section in the church, we get purgatory and penance. Simplify the Latin and language and speaking it. Patronized the monk order. What was the result? Basically, the church became the new Rome. The church took on a lot of the roles and the power that the Roman Empire had. Now the church would have that power. So when we talk about the Crusades, that's a good example because the Pope literally snaps his finger and says, we're going to war, and all of Europe says, okay, he's our leader. So the whole European continent unites and goes and tries to take on, the Nation of Islam there in Jerusalem. All right, the Montacism, the monks, basically you'd send your kid to this school, this monastery, and they would have to live under very strict rules, right? Benedictine rule is poverty, chastity, obedience. That's the big thing. Provide schools for children of the upper class, because again, if you wanted to be powerful yourself, you would have to link up with the church. You would have to align yourself and become an ally of the church to make yourself more powerful. So all these high-ranking elite families recognized that, so they would send these kids to these schools. And the funny thing is, these schools were so terrible for the kids that they would like scale the walls and try to jump out and get out of the school. And when they were captured and brought back to the school, the monks wouldn't say like, "Oh no, this is such a terrible place. People are running away." They would just say that these people are probably being, what's it called? They're being controlled by the devil, or like they have, like they need like an exorcism, like the devil is running them. So it's kind of interesting now. Back then, a little bit different. So other ways that the Benedictine monasticisms would help out, inns, hospitals, refugees in times of war. The big thing was libraries and the scriptoria. Again, these are in red, so let's jot these down. The scriptoria to copy books. And the books they would copy is called the illuminated manuscripts. All right, and we'll see them a little bit later. So libraries and scriptoria are very similar. And then illuminated manuscript, I'll show you an example of that moving forward. You can jot it down. All right, so bishops and abbots played a large part in the feudal system. The church controlled about 1/3 of all the land in Western Europe. Tried to curb feudal warfare. You were only allowed to fight 40 days of the year. That was a pope rule. And again, we wanted to curb heresy. So anybody who didn't believe in the church, that would be a problem. So like, for example, the Crusades, where the Islamic faith is different than the Christian faith, we got to take them out. Same thing in the Spanish Inquisition, right? Same thing happens in Spain. Anybody who's a non-believer is probably going to be, I think in Spain, what they like to do for the Inquisition was like burn people at the stake. That was like their thing. You would now have to be offered a tithe, okay, or a 1/10 tax on your assets given to the church, very similar to alms. Alms was like 2%, tithe 1%. So here's what a medieval monk's day would look like. You can kind of see here's the winter schedule, here's the summer schedule, so there is a little bit of discrepancy between the two. But basically, it's a lot of church service and work with some meditating mixed in, very little sleep, very little eating. All right, so you can kind of see here. Here's what a scriptorium is. Okay, it's basically like a little basement section where the monks, the child monks would work, and their job was to copy down books. It's not like they had a copy machine back then, so your job as scriptorium person would be literally you're going to copy books onto a different book, so we have different copies. And of course, the number one book they were copying down was the Bible, because again, this is a monasticism, and religion is going to run rampant in Europe and basically be the number one source of power. So, copy more down. We need to get this information in this book out to everybody, is kind of the deal. And now with the Dark Ages, again, I said that literacy goes down backwards too. So not a lot of people can read. The only people who can read are the people inside the church. And maybe that's another example of them wanting to keep all the power. So what they would make to help get the story or the information from the Bible out to people was they'd create these things called illuminated manuscripts, where it's like a Bible picture book. So you'd have the actual words up there, and then you'd have a picture kind of showcasing what's happening. So even the people that can't read, they can at least flip the pages, and they'll be able to kind of hopefully get some pieces of the story. And obviously, if you can read a little bit, well, then that kind of helps fill in some of the blank space or some of the blank information. So anyways, let's keep it moving here. So we had Clovis. He's the guy that unites everybody. Then we have Pepin of Herstal. We're not really going to talk about him, but we are going to talk about is Charles Martel, a.k.a. Charles the Hammer, because he wins one of the most important battles in probably like Christianity, one of their biggest battles in Christian history. If you're on if you're thinking like you're in the perspective of the Christian side of things, it's a big win. So Charles Martel, there's this place called he wins this Battle of Tours in 732. Basically, the Muslim invaders are making their way through Europe, and kind of the last stand for Christianity is this guy, Charles Martel, a.k.a. Charles the Hammer, and the Franks, and they do battle at the Battle of Tours, and it's kind of a huge victory. He ends up winning. Charles Martel ends up winning the battle. It's the battle itself that's not really important. It's just like what comes next that makes it important. So after Charles Martel wins the Battle of Tours, basically it keeps Europe as like a Christian state, as a Christian territory, where if you would have lost, it would have become Muslim territory, it would have been a part of the Islamic nation, and nobody else besides Charles Martel and his hammer and the Franks uh, would have stand a chance. So if Charles Martel loses, no one else would have been able to defeat them. Thus, let's play the what if game now and connect the dots. Christianity gets kicked out of Europe. Europe now becomes an Islamic nation, aka all the colonies that European nations found will become Islamic nations, like America, Canada, every other place in the world, all of Africa. So it's kind of like a big deal if he would have lost. All right, but he was able to win. And thus, most of Europe will be under the Christian flag for a long time. All right, we'll skip through that. Now, next we get this guy named Charlemagne. You can see he runs for a long time. He's probably the best ruler of this time period. Expands his empire, attacked everyone but the British. He established counts. So as he's conquering, he's putting different counts or governors in control. So it's the best government since Rome. We get the Carolingian Renaissance, where we start to get conversions. We start to see the rebirth of technology and reading and all these good things. Comes from Charlemagne taking over and basically running things. Now, Charlemagne, he knows that to be the most powerful person in the world, he needs to link up with the church. That's what he's going to have to do. All right, so we got the Franks here, right? Kingdom of Charles, you can see the Franks. They're massive. They basically hold all of Europe thanks to Charles Martel and Clovis. But here's what happens. So Charlemagne's like, you know what? I need to become more powerful. What am I going to do? So he gets crowned emperor in 800 by the Pope. So he's going to link himself with the Pope, who's the most powerful person in Europe. Thus, Charlemagne shoots up like this totem pole of powerful people in Europe and becomes number 2. All right, what does this mean? Well, like I just said, he becomes the most powerful person. All right, besides the Pope. But again, Charlemagne is dead in the ground in 1814, and this guy, Louis the Pious, takes over. He's an idiot. We want to know why he's an idiot. This is legit a test question. The question is, why is Louis the Pious an idiot? It's because he divided his kingdom amongst his sons. You never split up your kingdom. They always end up fighting each other, so we get a civil war that takes place. After him, we get wimpy rulers, and it falls apart. The Franks fall apart after Charlemagne passes away, and his son takes over and splits up his empire. All right. What was the economy like? We call it the feudal system. We'll talk more about the feudal system tomorrow in our reading. Basically, the main economic unit in the period is barley and crops. It was the barter system where you were trading. Like, I'll give you 5 onions if you give me 3 things of corn. All right. So we get a lot of trading, bartering. That's kind of what's going on in this time period, right? It's not a lot of like big merchants. It's more individual people trading with individual people. With the arts, we get the thing called Beowulf. We get this thing called the Book of the Kells. The Book of the Kells is literally just a picture book of the Bible. It's right here. I think this one you're not supposed to take a picture of the Book of Kells, but I think my history teacher in high school did. I believe it's illegal, but I think this is the actual picture right here of his crime. So if we ever want to pull a citizen's arrest, we know what to do. And then the learning goal, difference between Clovis, Charles Martel, and Charlemagne. Well, Clovis, he's the founder of the Franks. He brings everyone together. Charles Martel wins the big battle at the Battle of Tours, making sure that Europe stays a Christian state. Charlemagne takes over and just basically is like the advancer or the empire expander. So we have the empire created with Clovis. We have it stayed safe with Martel, basically like established a foothold, and then Charlemagne was able to expand it and make it into something much greater. Okay, so we can see here. And we'll talk more about Charlemagne in the upcoming week as well. And again, generalize the role of the church in Middle Age using specific examples. The church is the most powerful entity right now. Anybody who wants to become powerful needs to become friends with the Pope, needs to become friends with and become allies with the Pope. And we'll see what happens. If you want to ask the Pope a favor, you got to be on his good side. But now, coming up here this week, we'll see what happens when the Pope needs a favor. When he says, hey, we need to go take back Jerusalem, who's with me? And every single person who's powerful or wants to become powerful in Europe raises their hand and says, we'll go, I'll bring my army. And the Pope says, perfect, here's all the deals. So basically, we'll get to that later on. But, yep, this is kind of just the beginning of it, just kind of laying things out. But, all right, guys, have a good day. If you have any questions, let me know. Friday, last day to turn in missing work, February 26th. So get it done. Get it done so I can grade it. We can get you a good grade and keep you moving here. All right. Have a good day, guys. Talk to you guys tomorrow.